Behold, my glorious supporter BlackSheep has requested some discussion about game genres. On stream, we've previously discussed the meaning and usefulness of terms that get thrown around a lot, such as RPGs, JRPGs, Souls-like, roguelike, etc. So I want to ask you, Mr. Pants, to synthesize and briefly expand upon your thoughts on this particular matter, of which I have many. Yeah, they're not helpful at all. They don't really mean anything. And the problem with them is that people seem to say them believing two things which are not true. The first one is they seem to somehow think that everybody is on the same page about what they mean because, number two, they seem to be under the impression that there is a set definition, which is just objectively not the case. Many of these terms are just the way to associate games with their inspiration source, like Souls-like. The word Souls-like comes from Dark Souls. It just means a game that is like Dark Souls. So trying to use that word as a definition is inherently flawed because not only because not everyone is thinking it means the same thing as you, but because it doesn't actually have a definition. You know what I mean? Like it was never meant to be a word that really, anyway. A lot of these words are marketing terms, which are intentionally misused. So even though you might think they have this definition, they never did to begin with, and they're purposefully misused by a lot of the gaming industry anyway. They are bad. You're going to have to agree, if you're going to keep watching this particular Parley video, you're going to have to admit that they are not really useful. They don't really mean anything beyond something very vague, and you think when you say them that people know what you mean. And I think you would be surprised how little that is actually true. Like, obviously, I have some idea what the game is like if you say Souls-like, although you'd be surprised how many people completely misuse that term. But I don't have enough of an idea for it to be worth saying that term if you're trying to define a game. Just explain what the game is like, that it's better, it's more useful. Now, this is a shtick I have about a lot of topics, that using a sort of catchword, it sounds good. It's like, oh, we live in a society, whatever, but it doesn't actually have utility. It takes a short enough amount of time to explain the vague thing that these words mean that you should just explain that thing instead. And if you don't explain that thing, there's this interesting thought like, maybe we're not on the same page about what that means. Funny. Yeah. These terms are useless, and that's why. You can disagree, but you're probably not going to have a great time for the rest of this video. You're going to have a bad time with me. But you're welcome to disagree. I don't mind. I'd love to hear if people think no, they definitely should be used even more. No, they shouldn't, but I would love to hear what you have to say about that. I'm only saying no, you shouldn't, as that is definitely my opinion at the moment, but I would love to have it changed. I just really doubt it. I'd love to have it changed because that would be remarkable, because I cannot imagine how that would be the case. But I'm open to it. I just, again, good luck. So yeah, that's pretty much it, right? But let's dig into it a little more. Why do people use these terms? Now, they sometimes use them for marketing or for branding, or to sound like they know what they're talking about. It's kind of a business term sometimes. People use them to sound like they have this kind of fancy word for things. Kids really like these terms, I've found, and the reason is that, yeah, they feel like they're part of the group of adults that know the lingo for the thing, and lingo is gatekeeping and should be abolished wherever possible. But again, we talked about that earlier. But there's more to it. One other reason that these terms are very popular, and all these things are working against my logic for why they are useless and you shouldn't use them, but there's a ton of reasons people do, and one really important one is that people think that it helps them find games they're likely to enjoy. It doesn't, and I'm now going to argue that with you. Well, I'm going to present you an argument that you can take or leave about why. People have this idea that they play Dark Souls, so if a game is a Souls-like, well, it's like Dark Souls, and they liked Dark Souls, so they'll like it, right? But I believe that if you look at the data, that doesn't hold up. People don't actually like games that are particularly similar to a game they've already played. Now, they might be feeling something similar to liking a game, which is that they're comfortable with the game. But how many people that really like Destiny 2 go on to play some other looter shooter and they might tell you they like the game. They're comfortable with the game because it's similar to a game that they liked a lot and or were comfortable with. But do they really have any meaningful affection for the game? I don't think that they do. I think you will find that people largely don't. It's rare that you find someone who loves, like really has a meaningful relationship with many games that are very similar to each other. And it's not just like, I liked, like, this was really good for literally the exact same reasons I like this other game. In other words, they did like some part of the game a lot, but they liked it as if it was Dark Souls. In other words, they really liked Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but the things they liked the least about one of those games were the differences between the two, and what they liked the most were the similarities. They actually just like one of those games, and the only way to get more of the game was to play something similar, so it's not really the other game they're liking that much. When it's like that, there's a question to be asked. Is it worth the opportunity cost to go find something you would really like a lot more, rather than using these stupid genre words to try to find something that is similar, will be comfortable, but utterly unremarkable? And I think a lot of people don't think of it this way, so they would say yes. They'd say, yeah, I mean, it's because I'm more likely to like the game if I know what genre it's part of. And I would argue that it seems like that might matter, and it makes the game feel comfortable, but it doesn't actually make you enjoy the game very much, or it doesn't correlate with you really getting much out of the game. I think a whole other part of the puzzle here, why people think this is so effective, why a lot of people's reaction to this is probably going to be, what you're saying is ridiculous. The genre words totally work. I do like games that are in a genre. Genre words totally help. I think it's complicated why that is not true, or at least that's what I think right now. And I think another part of the puzzle is that many people don't play video games because they like them. It's not that they don't like video games, but many people do the hobby they do, not because they like it. They probably do like it, although plenty of people don't. They do it to have a community, or to have a pastime. It's the pastime they've looked at, or because they've grown used to it, or because their friends do it, or because they, that kind of thing. And that creates a very shallow, non-essential relationship with the hobby that can make things seem better than they are. You're enjoying the thing you're playing fine, but it's really not that much. Some people maybe don't have anything to compare to. They haven't found a game that they thought, whoa, this is exactly what I was looking for, And that feels unattainable. I mean, how would you do it? You might be asking at this point in the video, and we'll get to that. So I'll go for the thing that I'm familiar with, that I'll probably have fun with. But I guess my response is, I'm sure you do want a game that you love, Your argument is not that you don't want something to blow you away. That's insane. I'm sure everybody watching this would agree. I would like something that I absolutely love. I would like that. Your argument for, if you do argue that it's like not worth that or something, is that you don't think you'll find something like that, not that you somehow don't desire it. And so if you do agree that playing the thing in the same genre is really just you extending your love for that one game that is in the same genre, then your remaining argument that you're not going to go use the genre words, you're just going to try to find another game that's not directly related that you really love, your remaining argument there is that it would be hard to do that, which is true for sure. And I think that as somebody who streams for a living, it's much easier for me than it is for other people, for 3 reasons. The first one is that it's cheaper. I can tax deduct games that I buy. I get recommendations from my audience, and sometimes I even get gifted money to get the game. I might even use Twitch bounties to get the game for free as a sort of soft review copy. Certainly people who actually review video games for a living get review copies. And in that way, it is simply less expensive. There is not as much of a financial opportunity cost because I often either pay less or don't pay for a game that you would need to pay for to play. And it's more justifiable to spend money on a free-to-play game because it often saves me work time rather than only recreational time. Secondly, it's not as upsetting when I don't like a game to me. This is because I find it intellectually stimulating. Now, this is, I guess, the thing about my personality, but the other thing is, like, it's interesting to me in ways it might not have been because I find it fun to talk about for work. And so if I can bring something away from a game, which I nearly always can, I might enjoy a game that maybe I don't think is like that great or anything, but there is something really interesting about it to me. And so I'm sort of broadening the range of what would be a success. If it's very difficult to find the needle in a haystack game that is, you know, going to be the game you love, that's really interesting to you, this advantage, this second point, is that there are a few, you know, strands of hay in the haystack with the needle that I also found almost as interesting as a needle for a different reason, which is just part of my personality. So I guess for me, it makes it easier to argue that you should go into the haystack looking for the needle, maybe to find a few other things that are also really good. Number 3 is that I have all of you to recommend games. Now, you all have a very mixed track record for recommending games. And this is obvious because a lot of people use genre terms. A lot of people think if a game is like a game that someone likes, they will like it. And I would argue that that is not true. I don't think it's only not true for me because of who I am. I think it's generally not true. It doesn't really correlate, but it appears to correlate for various reasons that I've been explaining. But it certainly doesn't correlate for me. You can agree or disagree that that is a broad phenomenon. I don't know for sure. I think that it is a broad phenomenon, but it's certainly a phenomenon for me. I know why ever it is. I can't be certain, although I think I know why, but I know from experience that I do not reliably like games in the same genre. I often don't even like a game's genre in the first place. What I like about the game isn't the genre. My least favorite thing about Warframe is that it's a looter shooter. Like, for example, I like everything else about the game except that it's a looter shooter. I don't like leveling things up or needing to get the loot and unlock things. If everything was unlocked, I would like it more. A lot of people wouldn't. It's complicated that way, but I would like it more because of all the other stuff, the storytelling, the aesthetic, the build options, the way you organize those build options. I like those things, which is a lot of things. But the trapping of the game, that genre thing, if somebody were to recommend a looter shooter because I like a looter shooter, well, I don't like a looter shooter. So that's a problem. And again, I predict this is actually true for quite a lot of people. I don't know for sure. For myself, I do know for sure. So you all aren't always amazing at recommending games, which is completely fine. I actually quite like it when you all recommend games. I can take a look at them. About 75% of the time, I am not interested. But a lot of the time, maybe 50% or more of the time, I do write them down on a big list that I reference all the time on stream. And many of those games I do come back to much later, sometimes with notes from why it was recommended. And quite frequently, actually, for the games that I write down, which is maybe half of them, I do really enjoy at least something about the game. I'll give you an example. Based on the games that you have seen me play on stream, there isn't really any particularly good reason to believe, just based on the games, you don't know me, just based on the games, that I would like Doom 2016. Now, Doom 2016 is a game that a ton of people liked, so it must be relatively broad in its appeal. That makes it, an okay guess that somebody would like it, but particularly like it. Again, not like it, love it, really, really enjoy it. No, it doesn't seem particularly similar to other games that I've played. And if you've played Doom 2016, you know that while there are build options of a sort, they're really nothing like the games that I so often enjoy digging into. So what gives? Why is that a good recommendation? Well, it isn't for any obvious reason, but it was recommended over a year ago. And I, knew about Doom 2016 and put it on my list and bought it on sale. And it was in my inventory on Steam, or whatever it's called, my game library, for like a year and a half. And then one day I decided to crack it open. And I had an absolutely amazing time. I loved it. I did not merely like it. I really, really loved it. I loved a lot of things about it. And the reason that recommendation worked is not random. I remember when Pixel recommended it from my stream, they said, there's this way that the game has this, like, it just touches the surface of having synergy in a way that it's not really a part of the game. You could kind of take it or leave it. A lot of people won't even really get there. You might just not even have those features in the game, the runes, if you've played this game. But it can be something really powerful and special and rewarding. And it's an interesting example of a game that is very aware of build, ideas and synergy and customization, but it's really not the point of the game. So they just touch just a little dip, just a little poke, just a little taste of what a Doom 2016 all about synergy might have been like. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed how it felt like each part of all your guns were kind of a solution to a problem in the combat puzzle. That felt cool. It almost felt like you built your own arsenal of weapons that all have a purpose or whatever. And it's just, they actually are the only choices. But that feeling was really cool. The feeling of kind of synergy between weapons, or weapons countering specific things, but in cryptic enough ways that you could kind of use them for a bunch of stuff. I really liked it. It was a really good choice. And it was a good choice because Pixel understands something of the real reason that I like all these games I like. The build options, the game design idea for the build options, the game design, the way that it's been thought out and balanced and imbalanced, but then justified or made okay somehow. That's why it was a good recommendation. And that's what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that you somehow magically know what game is going to be a slam dunk for you. I'm not suggesting that you completely ignore what a game's gameplay is. I'm suggesting that ignoring the meaningless genre term that it's stapled with will make you better off. Watch someone play the game. Don't watch the review. Think about what you really liked specifically about games. Think about what you don't like about games you would say you really like. There are things. I like nearly every major feature in Genshin Impact, but I don't somehow like everything about Genshin Impact. That's ridiculous. Of course not. And thinking about the things I don't like is really helpful. That's what you want to take from those games. And if you do that, you will eventually, I'm not that old, it's not after that long, eventually arrive at the ability to discern whether a game is likely to be a game you will love, not based on any of this superficial, pointless crap, like the genre name or whatever, but based on the real way, the real mechanism that you're enjoying. You will become one of the few people in the entertainment industry who actually does know what they want. Most audiences do not have any idea what they want. They think they do not. I don't think that's a secret nowadays, but yeah, people don't really know what they want. They think they do. It correlates kind of with something they might want, but that's because the people making the entertainment do know what they want. And so they know, yeah, okay, the people who say they like Call of Duty don't really like the things they think they, not necessarily Call of Duty. They would like a bunch of other stuff they won't go find because they think they like Call of Duty. But we know what they like, what they actually like, at least better than they do. So we will make the game that they think they like vaguely similar to what they actually like, which is why these genre terms appear to work fairly well, because maybe you, no offense to you, viewer, but you in general, people in general, maybe they don't know what they like, but the people making the game at least know a little bit better what they like, and most of the time. And yeah, they make games that way. So I hope I've convinced you that at the very least, the genre terms might seem like they give you an idea of like, oh, I do or don't like roguelikes or whatever. But please open your mind to the idea that that term actually maybe doesn't mean that much. Those games maybe don't actually have that much in common. There were probably a lot of games in that genre that you overlooked because you think you don't like that word, but it actually doesn't make the games have that much in common, and many of them might address, or maybe even totally reverse, the thing that you don't like about that genre. That genre is maybe not real. And furthermore, if it does seem to work, there are a number of factors influencing that. There are different levels of enjoying something. Simply yes or no is not a good enough way to describe whether you're enjoying a game to learn what games you might really love. And furthermore, the people making the game are part of the equation as well, because they do have a better idea. Their job is to know and figure out what you actually like and make the games that you're going to play, whether or not it makes sense to, be a little bit like that so that you will enjoy them and keep buying that franchise that maybe you think correlates with what you enjoy, but maybe doesn't, that whole thing. So they're not terrible. They're not terrible. Fine, you know? But they're not worth it. Just explain what the game is. Just go watch some gameplay of the game. Don't bother watching trailers. Trailers are worthless garbage. Trust me, if you enjoy a thing, go watch its trailer. It's comical. Like, it is actually comedy inducing. If you enjoy something and go watch its trailer, I think you'll find most of the time it's actually kind of embarrassing the way the trailer is set up. It's stupid. Like, it's not really evoking anything about the experience. Or many times you can look back to games like, a really good example would be Paper Mario the Origami King. This is a really random example. That game has some really interesting promotion, and a lot of the gameplay looks really cool, and the story is really interesting if it's what you're looking for. And it has interesting game mechanics in some ways. But you know what you'll have a lot of trouble finding for that game, or at least at the time of release it was hard to find? The combat, because it sucks. There's like virtually no depth, except for the boss fights. There's an interesting thing there. But yeah, it's a pretty half-baked, changed for the sake of change combat mechanic that is buried. And so watching anything other than the gameplay of that game would only serve to confuse you about whether you will actually enjoy that game. Because even if you are going to enjoy everything other than the combat, you're going to be bogged down by quite a lot of very, very tedious and samey combat encounters. And if you were a person who enjoyed Paper Mario the Origami King's combat, you will at least admit that it is rather shallow. There are not very many different mechanics throughout it. Most of the fights are objectively pretty much the same. If you enjoyed them, that's great. I'm happy it didn't damage the experience for you, but they are not very interesting. Interesting meaning there is much to them. That correlates with people liking it, you know. You asked me to tell you what I think about genre terms. That's what I think about genre terms. Excellent Parley, of course.